Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Trisha, and today I'm going to show you how to make some really cool monoprints. Mono meaning one. And I've had people ask me, well, why would you want to make just one? Or why is this different than painting? And we're going to do it. It's going to have a painterly feel to it. But there's nothing else like prints that are so cool. It's the unknown, the unexpected, the surprise, and kind of the graphic quality to it and the texture. So you'll see what I mean. We're gonna paint things that, like that, or something like that, this, and then something completely different, a different style, which is, this is more of a graphic posterized style. I'm going to show you that one as well. But you'll see when I show you some close-up images of these, you'll see the texture and the layers of color that come through. And there's just, you can't get that any other way than through these printing, these single prints. So it's a single print, it's called a monoprint, but we are going to pull numerous layers, and you'll see what I mean when we get down to it. So let's get going. Okay, so here's a look at the supplies that you will need. It looks like a lot, but it's really not. I'm just kind of showing you everything I use, and you certainly don't need all of that. I love the open acrylics because open means they have an extended dry time, so they don't dry as quickly, and they really are key to this kind of printmaking. However, they're a little on the pricey side, so you can get by with some other acrylics, Liquitex, and even the cheap craft acrylics. However, you will need an extender. You will see in the art supply selection, they will have an extender that will extend the dry time on these kinds of paints. So look for that if you're going to go with the cheaper paints. Then I have got, again, I got a variety of brushes. You only need a few. Sometimes I only use one or two in the entire painting. I have a palette knife, which is fun to use to mix up the texture. I put a little paper towel to dry my brushes off in that bowl. Q-tips sometimes are fun to draw and paint with. A paint palette can be as simple as a paper plate. However, you will see me use this glass top. I got it at IKEA, and it was just a glass top for one of the tops of the dressers. Real cheap, but I love it as my paint palette. So that's an option if you want to continue painting. Bucket with water, and there's some more of my brushes. Those are kind of my key brushes that I use. And then you're going to need a jelly plate. This is a gelatin, type plate. That's where we do our printmaking on. And then I've made a registration mark, and I'll discuss that as we go along. And then some printmaking paper, whatever you have on hand. It does not have to be specified as printmaking. Michaels does carry this. It's a very thin. If you want something nicer, you can go up in a heavier weight. Watercolor paper does the job, or any mixed media paper that you have. And then clean up is some wipes and some water. I have tape just because we're going to tape down our registration piece there so it doesn't move. And then these were some of the inspirations that I used on some of the paintings that I'm going to show you. So, pull out your favorite artist. Nothing wrong with using their paintings, the colors that they've used, or whatever. In fact, this book that I have, Hockney to Van Gogh, Hockney got a lot of his inspiration from Van Gogh. and then some of my own photos. And even I couldn't find the photo that I painted this from, so I just pulled my old painting and used that as inspiration. So that is an overview of the supplies that you will need. And like I said, this is very exhaustive. You can simplify it with whatever you have. Be creative. So just a piece of acetate. I've made my registration marks. This fits my gel plate. And then I have my paper cut to size. And as you see, I've allowed for an inch or a border around all sides. So I will always line it up with those lines there. And I can do this I've done it without having, you just kind of wing it. But I thought I would show you if you had a photo for inspiration. So I'm going to put my photo down here, and I put tape on it so that it doesn't move. And I'm going to line that up over the top and put a little tape here so that doesn't move as well. Just tape 2 areas so it doesn't move. And those bubbles that you see, that's fine, that's normal, that's not gonna cause any problems except for maybe a little more difficult to see, but we're just using this as an idea. So first thing you want to do is you want to work always background to foreground. So I am going to start with my sky. And, I see a little bit of kind of a purpley in here, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to mix up. This is my ultramarine blue, and actually I have a dioxide purple, but I could even put in a little bit of that alizarin crimson and get kind of a purpley blue. And then maybe I want to green it down a little bit, put a little turquoise in. Just have fun with mixing your colors. See what you come up with. And go with it. Put a little white, lighten it up. We can see what that color is going to be. It's also a good idea to work dark to light. We can go back and forth between our lights and darks, but I think it's really best to work dark to light. I'm going to go with the sky. I'm going to kind of create a mid-tone though. Something that's not real dark and something that's not real light, because it is sky. Skies are usually very on the light side. And there I got a little purple going. It's a little purpley. And now go with when you're laying down your sky or your background, I recommend a big old brush or dry brush. I have this one too. This works. You could even, this one's too soft, so it won't do what I want to do. But if you have an old paintbrush, the older, this one would probably be really good. The reason being, you want it dry. I'm not adding any water to my paints. I want it dry. Reason being is you can see more of the paint strokes, the brush strokes, and that's what's the texture. That's what's really cool. So I'm laying it down. I'm getting all to the edges and, going any which way till I see what I like. And, if you want to have fun, you can do kind of some swirls in there, do a Starry Night kind of thing. If you want that look, that will show up. You can always lay down your paint. You decide you don't like it or you don't want it there, you can wipe it up. So don't worry, about what you're doing. It's not permanent right now. All right, so there is my first layer, and I'm not sure if you can see the brush stroke so much right now, but when I pull this print, that's what it's called, pulling a print, you will see all those brush strokes. So I'm taking my paper and I'm lining it up with the top and the sides as best I can. Doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm just pressing down on it. Now if you have a brayer, which I do, but it's not right here with me, or what's called a Baron, which is a little handle that puts pressure down. You don't have to press real hard. Of course, the more you press, the more paint you'll pull off. But I'm just putting gentle pressure, and I'm making sure I'm getting all of it. And now I'm just going to pull it off. And look at, you can see all those brush strokes. I got a little gob of something there I don't want. Okay, now this paint is still on the paint here. It is still workable. So I could even go in and paint or pull up some paint if I wanted, but I'm just gonna leave it just like that. I think that's really neat. So that is my sky, and I brought it in down the whole way because there's water there, and because I like to see depth. So I like to see that color underneath other colors. So that's why it's going to be all throughout, and I'm going to let bits and pieces of it show here and there. I'm pulling off my leftover paint because I don't want to get any more paint on there this next pull. Sometimes I leave it on there if there's just a little bit. I'm okay with that. And I'm wiping it off with water. You can also use a wipe. If you have wipes, they're real good at doing that, at pulling it off. And I'm making sure it's fairly dry, because you will see when if I add paint that's got a lot of water on it, it will repel. All right, so now I'm going to go with my next area, and I am going to start working on the green of the trees here. Again, furthest back, darkest point. So I'm going to change my brush. I could use the same brush, but I've got a different brush that's still on the big side that I'm going to use. I don't want it wet, and I don't have a green, so I'm going to mix up a green. I'm going to use a little of this turquoise blue. And I am going to wipe off that green. Now, if you weren't working with a picture underneath, it's sometimes helpful to leave a little bit of that leftover paint there so you know where you were working, where things were, so you know where to draw your next area. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this water in here. So I'm going to pull in, I'm going to mix up a blue in there. Dry my brush off. That's why I have this paper towel in the bowl. I get my brush dry because I do not want it really wet. I want it dry. It's got a little bit of green in it, but that's okay. I want to get some greens in there in this first print, because again, remember, I'm working background to foreground. So in the background is where I'm seeing more of the darker greens. So let's, got a lot of green on this brush. So let's get in some of those greens, background greens first. And this has got some nice texture. And you could take a brush or a Q-tip. This is what's fun about printmaking, is it's play, it's experimentation. So you could take and, I don't know, draw in some, pull out, what you're doing is kind of pulling out the color a little bit with these Q-tips. And that is going to, you're going to see a lower layer when you do that. So you can do that with your Q-tips. And if you don't like it, we're going to do another layer over the top of that anyways. So you can do it with a brush and pull up some of that paint. All right, let's see what happens now when we do this. I don't want to rinse those off quite yet. Line it up. And if it's off a little bit, that's what makes the print so interesting. All right, but see how I pulled that paint off with my Q-tip? That's kind of a cool little texture that we've got there. All right, so now, and you can see these look like grasses in there. I really like that. Now I think I'm going to go back and pull my next layer, and I'm going to put some yellow in here and maybe some lighter greens, and I'll maybe carry those down below. And I'm even going to leave, I'm going to leave what's there for now. Go. Okay, now you could even go back. This paint is still wet and you can work right on the painting. So there's a few areas that I don't know, it looks too spongy. I'm going to soften it out a little bit, spread it out. So you can still work with it. Still wet. Okay. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to work down here a little bit more. I want to get a lighter green in there. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to go with some lighter green instead to get some highlights. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want too many colors. So let's just get some highlights. Get some of that lighter green, add some white to it to get some highlights. All right. And you see I left the paint from here, what was there before. That's okay, it'll go down again, but it helps me to kind of see where to put my next marks. These, lighter colors at the end really help to give it some depth and dimension. And even in the trees. Let's get into the yellow and break the yellow up a little bit. Okay. Let's pull our next print. All right. The only thing I don't like is I don't like those blotches. They turned out kind of blotchy, maybe because I was a little bit heavy on the paint. So this is where I might go in with my paintbrush and just kind of soften the edges a little bit, spread that paint around so it's not as blotchy. Make sure my brush is dry when I do it. There's nothing that says you can't go back over on top with a paintbrush. Just make sure you don't lose too much of what makes that print a print. Again, the layers and the texture. But there you go. This looks like a nice, it was an early fall day. All right. Now for our next kind of monoprint, painterly monoprint. Now this time we are going to be painting all of our layers at once and pulling them up together. In order to paint them all at once and not have all the colors blend together, we need to kind of work in layers and let those layers dry. I've put an image down. Again, you can do a sketch that you've done or just, something from your mind. I'm doing an image of my dog. Keep in mind that it will be the reverse of this image when I pull the print. So her face, instead of facing this way, when I pull the print, it will face that way. So if you don't want that, then you're going to have to, when you print that out, you're going to have to print it in reverse to begin with. So with this, I'm going for kind of that graphic look or posterized look. And so I'm going to kind of outline her with this dark, I'm using Payne's gray. It's not black. You could use black, but I'm going with the dark Payne's gray. I'm getting a finer tip brush. And I am just going to start outlining her how I see it now. I want my paint, your paint will get thinner and that's okay. All that's going to show up. It's kind of cool. And if there's anything that I don't like, I can always go back. I could go with my Q-tip or I could go with a paper towel and my Q-tip and just kind of pull it off. Make it thinner. Pull that all off. Where's my paper towel? I can went wrong, pull it off. So let's start over. And I'm gonna go back and The irregularity of the line, thick and thin, is kind of cool. I like it. Excuse me. All right, and around her ear, let's go in and draw a little bit of hair. Little shaggy ears. I see a little highlight in her eye there. So I am going to take some white, maybe I'll add just a little bit of color to it. And do that little dot of white. And then you can't really see anything over there. And then there's really not, but I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on her nose. Okay, now this, if you were doing regular painting, this would be something that you would do at the end of your painting. But we're working in those layers again, so we have to think about what would be the top layer in a painting all the way down to the bottom layers. So I'm going to take this same, maybe make a little bit more. I'm going to go and look at some highlights around her and paint some of those in. So where it's light, I see some light over here. And I see some light over here. And I see some light just on the edges. And maybe a few little highlights here. I want to go back to the black or the dark because I have her eye and her nose that is dark. And I will tell you, if you want to heat or you want to dry things quicker. So right now, I mean, I could go over that dot if I were sure that it was dry. I'm not sure that it's dry right now, so I don't want to go over it. And I can go back into the eye a little bit after it seems like it's dried. And there's her nose again. I could go over that if I was sure that that was dry. but I'm not. So I'm not going to go over it yet. And the thinner I paint this, the more you're going to kind of see it's going to be lighter. So I want to kind of get it darker. So I'm going with a little bit thicker paint. And I don't see her eye over here, but I'm going to imagine there's just a little hint of it right there on the other side of her nose. Now I'm going to go in with my next color, and I'm going to go in with a darker brown to get those darks. And a little bit of red. Some raw sienna. Some burnt umber. And I added a little red oxide. All right, and now I'm just going with that same brush. You can change brushes if you want finer, but again, I'm kind of going for that more graphic quality. A couple things you want to think about is, do you want to do any shading? Okay, do I want to capture a bit of a shadow that we have in here and a bit of a shadow that we have under here? One of my prints I didn't do that, but in this print I think maybe I'll demonstrate that. So you have to think again. Normally in a regular painting you'd put your color down and then you'd come back with a darker color and do some shading. But we got to work again in reverse. So we're going to put our shadows down first and then we'll come back and put the lighter color on top. So it's kind of a light to dark thing as well. So I'm going to do her bed, and it's kind of a white color, maybe with a tad of yellow in it. Yeah, I don't like that. That's a pale yellow. So let's get white. Maybe we'll do a tad of red, pinky color, orangey color. Okay, and I'm going to use maybe some of this brown just for a shadow, maybe a little bit of a gray, a dark gray for a shadowed area. So I'm going to shadow her bed here. And I can go back and maybe with just the white and even kind of pull some of that color together. Okay, and I want it to look like it's the bedding, the cushy bedding, so I'm just kind of giving it some texture. And again, I'm going over the line a little bit. That's okay because it's dry, it's not blending. And there's kind of my shadowing. Shadowing there. And then in my bed, I want to do a red bed. So let's make some red. Testing it. I really am just focusing on her right now. So the other part's not crucial that it's dry. I have to be careful though that I don't mix it. All right, so now I want to go with a color that is in between the darker color and the lighter color. So let's add a little bit of this darker color to my lighter color and see what we get. Except I want a warmer, so I want more yellow or red. Let's go with this ochre yellow in here. More of a buff color because she's a buff colored dog. That's what they call her. All right, that's a pretty good color, right? Maybe a little bit of red. Makes it a little bit darker because I want that contrast. All right, and now I'm going to just go in here and I'm just going to paint right over top of everything. Hopefully it's all good and dry. If you notice that it's not, stop what you're doing, walk away, or use your dryer. Oh, I see a little bit of, looks like blue spreading. Wet paint tends to reactivate already dried paint. So in this situation, you kind of want to go a little bit more on the heavier side. You want to work fast. Don't want to spend a lot of time, you know, fussing with it. And I'm running out of paint, so I gotta go back and create more, and hopefully I can get that same color again. A little bit thicker on this layer. Don't spend a lot of time overworking it. Oh, we got a little bit of the blue that's showing through, so that might smear a little bit. All right, and then you're gonna let that dry. And so either, again, walk away, let it dry. You want a thinner paint to go over the last layer. So this is fluid acrylic. You can take any of your acrylics but thin them down so that they are not as thick as these guys, but you know, much more watery, because you will see we're going to go over this top layer with a thin layer of the white paint. Because what this does is this then attaches your paper to it, and it kind of releases all the other colors that have dried on here. So it's still a little sticky. That's okay. I just want to make sure it's not, you know, so much so that it's blending into other colors. So thinner paint, very, you know, fluid, very liquidy, and we just want a thin coat of it. So I'm using a bigger brush so that I can get over it quickly. Again, we don't want to overwork it. So this is almost like a very thin milkshake. So we're just lightly over the top of everything. Very lightly. Up to the edges. Clean off my edges to make sure there's none pulling off the edges. I got a little bit thick over there and I don't want it thick on the edges there. Oh, okay. And then I can go back if I made a little mistake here. All right. And then quickly before this dries, we got to get the paper down. So I stand up, I line it up, and I put my paper down. Thicker paper works better than thinner paper on this. Because you kind of got layers of paint. You got a lot of layers. It's thicker layers. So now what has to happen is this has to dry completely before we can pull it up. So I will, a lot of times, you know, a couple hours, come back and do it. And here's our finished piece. There's a few areas where the paint held on to the jelly plate, but that's okay. That's part of the print. You know, if it gets real bad, then you got to figure out, you know, backtrack and figure out, did I put too much paint on? Did I put not enough paint on? Did I let it dry too long? You know, some of these things are trial and error. And then again, look at your print. What are the areas that you like and what are the areas that you don't like, and do it again. Fix what it is that you don't like and keep doing what you do like until you get what you want. It's, you know, that's the fun thing of prints is it's trial and error and it's play and it's fun. And I hope you enjoyed your time here with me and you put out some beautiful, beautiful monoprints. Thanks. Bye.